Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is it on?
No.
Start. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Light
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna.
Is it already?
Hare Hare.
That is connected.
Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Cable loose. That's fine.
Is there one more part?
Like so.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So you will. Okay, got it. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Good enough? So we'll leave it. It's not connected. So thank you very much for coming today. And today I'll speak on the topic of how to respond to adversities resourcefully and not resentfully. So let's begin with some prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana
Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Namo
Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Vinamne Namaste Saraswati Devi Bhavani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Veshakarine
Vancha
Tattvatarubhyasya Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Jai
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Let's speak based on the Bhagavad Gita 18:35, which talks about how our mind gets caught in negative thinking. Yaya swapnam bhayam shokam vishadam madameva cha navimunjati durmedha disa partha tamasi. So Krishna says, Yaya swapnam. Here, swapnam refers to daydreaming. Some people just constantly don't do anything. They substitute dreaming for working. Yeah, swapnam, bhayam. And some other people substitute working with dreading. This may go wrong, that may go wrong. So, dreaming and dreading both are associated with the future. Yeah, swapnam, bhayam. Shokam. Shokam is lamenting. And then Vishadam. Vishadam is moroseness. So lamenting is about the past. And moroseness is for the present. Never works right.
Krishna Krishna
Vishadam Now we all experience
Hare Rama
but Krishna is saying
Hare
reactions lies with the when one doesn't stop doing this, one keeps doing it constantly, that is good, that is misdirected that is intelligence which is being overpowered by ignorance.
Hare Krishna.
These are part of the tamas. So determination,
Hare
what it means is
Krishna.
when normally determination is considered to be a
Krishna.
somebody else.
Krishna. Hare.
There are many forces to let go of something. Despite the fact that
Hare Rama.
that you often call it as obstinacy.
Hare
For understand
Rama.
so when one keeps holding on that translates misdirected determination. Determination in the mode of ignorance. And so resentment, vishadam madam, shokam vishadam, that is typical of resentment. So why did this happen? Why is this happening like this? Now we all move forward in life with some expectations. As living beings, to be conscious is to be desirous. We have certain desires, certain dreams, certain ambitions. That's just natural. And then based on that, we have certain expectations of how things will work out. And when they don't work out that way, it certainly disorients us. So the emotion itself is not the problem. It is the persistence of the emotion. It is the inability to let that emotion go. That is what Krishna is saying is the problem here. So how do we deal with this? Krishna is talking all this about the mind. And earlier in the 7th chapter, he has talked about austerity of the mind. Austerity, generally when we talk about it, means that something which we don't like to do, but we do it because we know it is good for us. Say we might fast, either for health or for some sacred on holy days. That is an austerity of the body. So the first austerity of the body, of the mind that Krishna says is in 1716. Manha prasada saumyatvam maunamatta vinigraha bhava samshuddhirityetad tapo manasa uchyate. So the manha prasada, it means cheerfulness, satisfaction, happiness. So it's interesting, Krishna is saying cheerfulness is an austerity of the mind. That means we can choose to be cheerful, or we can cultivate cheerfulness. So life will create resentment within us. But he says we should learn to cultivate cheerfulness, cultivate happiness. Now how do we do that? One way to do it is generally when we see that what all things are not going the way we want them to, what all things going wrong in our life, that's what causes agitation. That's what causes resentment, negativity. So the opposite of these negative emotions, resentment or moroseness, the opposite of that would be gratitude. So the way, now when we talk about gratitude, what does it mean? Gratitude generally comes by looking at what we have or what is right in our lives. So I'll talk about an acronym which are 3 strategies. Whenever we feel resentful, when something has gone wrong in our lives, it may be, we might be going through some phase of disease, might be having some upheavals in our professional life, in our relationships, whatever it is we're going through. How can we have a cheerful attitude based on gratitude. Now, there are certain emotions which will come upon us naturally. And in the inner world, we cannot drive out any thoughts or emotions. If something is there inside, we can't tell it, go away. It's a simple psychological experiment. If someone tells you that for the next 30 seconds, don't think of a pink monkey. You can think of whatever you want, just don't think of a pink monkey. What happens?
It's pink.
We may never have thought of pink monkey, but we think about it. So, in the mental world, no doesn't work so easily. But we can say yes to something. Now, the unwanted thoughts cannot be driven out, but they can be crowded out. They cannot be driven out. Get out, get out, get out, get out. But if we bring something else inside, they get crowded out. So what do we bring inside? That's what we bring inside. That is what will help us to get rid of negative thoughts, of resentment, for example. In the Bhagavatam, there is the example of a great king, Parikshit. Now, Parikshit was a very powerful and virtuous king. Generally, these two don't go together very often. Where there is power, soon it is power corrupts. Even if people start off with good intentions, sooner or later the power makes them corrupted. So, on the other hand, there's many people in the world have virtue, but if they don't have power, the virtue doesn't do much good to people. But he had this combination, he was powerful and virtuous. And yet, for a minor mistake, he was cursed to die in 7 days. Now, actually, in some ways, being cursed to die in 7 days is worse than being cursed to die immediately. Because the curse to die immediately, at one level, okay, it's the painless death. So, but if you do in this much time you're going to die, then death is approaching, and there's an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Now, of course, if we have that notice, we can use it to bring about some closure, positively. And that's what he does. But how does he do that? We talk about this broadly. So I'll talk about the acronym. See, whenever something goes wrong in our life, how do we cultivate gratitude at that time? So I'll talk about the acronym ACE. ACE. So ace your life with gratitude. A is whenever anything bad happens, look for the good around the bad. Generally, when bad things happen, our mind just fixates on it. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? And that can blind us to everything else. So, okay, this bad thing has happened. Look for the good around the bad. Good around the bad means, okay, this is, what are the other things still right in my life? And for all of us, there are many things which are right in our life. In fact, if we are just alive, there is more right than wrong in our life. Probably the average age, this room might be around 30, 35, 40, whatever. No, there are many millions of people who die before they attain our age. So just to be alive actually is a miracle. So many things can go wrong at any moment. So just the fact that we have life is itself a gift. And then all of us, we can think of the many other gifts that we have in our life. We often say count your blessings. But actually it's not just count your blessings, it's also make your blessings count. What does that mean? It is only when we regularly count our blessings, then we can make our blessing counts when we need to. Our mind is a creature of habit. And if we don't think about some things, we stop even noticing those things. So whatever we focus on, that stays a prominence in our consciousness. Whatever is not focused on, it goes in the background, it goes away. So if we do not regularly cultivate gratitude, that means we don't regularly count our blessings, then when things have gone wrong, we will just not be able to think about those things. Because our consciousness has become, our mind has become habituated to thinking of only certain things. Say, it can be money, it can be our position, it can be our prestige in society. Some people it might just be sports. I was in Canada, I met a person from Sri Lanka, and he said that, he was telling me how he became serious about spiritual life. That he was a very avid cricket fan. And then in 2000, between 2000 and 2015, roughly, Sri Lanka came in 3 World Cup finals. Well, 2011 and then some T20 and something else. And in all of them, in the final it lost. You are from Sri Lanka?
No problem.
So this boy said, he was a cricket fan, and there was another fan, his close friend was also a cricket fan. And he said one day he just got a phone call from that friend's family, and they said that his friend had committed suicide. He was so dejected, so devastated. Once, twice, thrice, he lost the matches. Now none of the cricketers committed suicide. So what happened is that if our mind becomes fixated on something, then we experience all our emotions in relationship with that itself. And yes, yeah, you can enjoy sports and sometimes feel bad if the favorite team loses. But it's a game. You don't have to get so fixated on it. So what happens is we need to regularly count our blessings. That means maybe when we have some time, write down what are the things that we are thankful for. And every day we will look at, if we do our prayers, quite often what happens is when we pray, at that time, if we just sit down and start praying, we are often, our thoughts are caught in, oh, I have to do this, and why is this not working out, and why is this happening like this? So then, even if you pray, it's not very easy to connect with God also. But if we have written down what are the things that are right in our life, and then look at them, read them once, and what happens? And then we can turn and pray. So if we make it a regular habit of looking at the things that are right in our life, then what will happen? Gratitude is not just an emotion that we sometimes feel. Gratitude is also a habit that we cultivate. So when we make it a habit to consciously be grateful, then when difficulty comes, at that time, we can also make our blessings count. By make our blessings count means that when some negativity has happened in our life, when some adversity has come, and that is consuming, dominating our consciousness, at that time, to think about what is right in our life and to dwell on it, it will be possible when we have made a habit of being grateful. So, if we count our blessings, then we can make our blessings count. That we count means in normal times, we remember our blessings. Then those blessings will find a place in our consciousness, and then they can come in our consciousness and drive out the negativity. So, it's talking about this King Parikshit. Now he's cursed to die, and he's cursed to die. What are his thoughts? The Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, the chapters 18 and 19 describe his thoughts as he comes to know that I have been cursed. And his first thought is that, okay, I did a mistake. And if that mistake, I get this result, that account gets cleared. So instead of having some consequence coming to me later, this consequence has come to me now. And this account will get cleared. So generally, when somebody does something bad, say a couple of years ago I had gone to Sin City to the Sin City? Las Vegas. Now it's interesting, in Las Vegas, Las Vegas has, among all the cities in the world, as far as the residents of the city are concerned, the citizens of Las Vegas have the lowest percentage of gambling in all of America. People from everywhere come and gamble over there, but they don't gamble because they see every day what happens because of gambling. So suppose somebody goes and gambles, and then if they gamble, what is the worst thing that can happen to them?
Broke. Loser.
Sorry? No. That's true, it's bad. Lose happiness.
You get addicted.
Yes. The worst thing that can happen is they win. Because if they lose, that's terrible. But hey, I shouldn't do this again. This is terrible. I don't want to get involved in this. But once you win, what happens is you get a taste for it, you get hooked to it. And then initially, nobody with any reasonable good sense is going to stake a huge amount of money in the first gamble. So it's only when you win, you think, hey, maybe I can get more. You put more, and you put more, and you put more. And then when they lose, it will be devastating. So the point I'm making here is that sometimes getting the consequences of our actions, it can seem like misfortune, but it can save us from a bigger misfortune. So what Parikshit says over there is, okay, I did this mistake. He had offended a great sage, and he was cursed because of that. He says, it's over. And he says that it's good that this reaction came upon me, and this account gets cleared. So generally, for every action, there will be a consequence for that. So when for the good, what happens by that is that thereby it helps us to at least avoid being completely dominated by negativity. The problem is still there. We may have to live with pain, but we don't have to live in pain. With pain means, if we consider this to be our consciousness, pain is a component in our consciousness. Live in pain means the pain becomes the container of our consciousness. We can't think of anything else at all. So when we learn to look for the good around the bad, okay, this is there, it's a problem, but there are so many things right in my life also. Then that negativity doesn't consume us. Srila Prabhupada is one of the most prominent teachers of Bhakti Yoga in the Western world. And when he was at the age of 70, he came to America. He went to America, and till that time in his life, he had tried repeatedly many things. He had tried to be a pharmacist. His vision was spiritual. And he wanted to share spiritual wisdom, and he thought, if I earn a lot of money, I can donate that, and I can use for sharing the spiritual wisdom. And he had also tried himself to write a magazine and distribute it, to work various ways, but none of them had been any significantly successful. And when Srila Prabhupada came to America, he came on a cargo ship. And when he saw the American coastline, at that time he composed a song. And the first line of that song is an expression of gratitude. Boro Krupa Koile Krishna Adamera Prati Kila Kiyani Leheta Koroe Begati. Boro Krupa Koile Krishna. Krishna, you have been immensely merciful to me. If you look from an objective perspective, Srila Prabhupada was 69 and he had practically no financial assets. He had just 40 rupees with him. And that was the time when immigration rules in America were quite strict. So there were hardly any Indian immigrants over there. So Indian currency was not easily convertible. In fact, Srila Prabhupada took those 40 rupees to America, and in 1968, when he came back to India by flight, and from the airport, when he went to the nearby the temple, that is the to that rickshaw, he paid those 40 rupees. So he went literally penniless. And then he had no contacts, he had no supporters, he had no institutional support. And the only asset he had was his own body. And that crumbled. First he had motion sickness, and then he had 2 heart attacks. And I was in America, I was flying from LA, another place, and then somebody got a symptoms of a heart attack. So immediately they turned the flight around and landed again, had emergency landing, had the person taken to a hospital. So at that time, he was in the middle of a ship, there's no such thing available. And he finally, after nearly 2 months of travel, came to America. And he has nothing. The only resource, his body, is also still barely recovering. The first thought an ordinary person would have, I want to go to a hospital and see a doctor, see if everything is alright. But Prabhupada is saying, Boro Krupa Koye Krishna. Krishna, you are very merciful to me. So we say, what is the mercy over here? So the mercy is, Prabhupada, he was a spiritual person. He wanted to carry out the instructions of his spiritual master. And he had been trying that throughout his life. His spiritual master had told him, his guru had told him, go to the Western world and share the message of Krishna Bhakti. So he was grateful that he had the opportunity to do that now. He had no facility to do it. He did not have any strong contacts, he did not have financial strength, he did not have any speaking engagements, nothing. He had no facility, but he had the opportunity. And he was grateful for that. So look for the good around the bad. And no matter how many things are bad, if we look, we can always find something that is good. So this is the first step. Now, in some ways, when we are looking at it, when we are looking for the good around the bad, that means that good is already there in our life. So we could say that is the good that has happened to us in the past and it is continuing on. Now, we may say, okay, all this sounds fine. I can look for all the good around the bad, but the bad is still there. What do I do about that? If I was in Phoenix and there was a friend, he told me that he had come to India for a pilgrimage. And he went back. And when he went back, he had a lot of office mails coming, but he decided, I just want to cut off from my work. So he did not check any of his mails. Then he went back to Phoenix, he went to his office. And he went to his office and he saw there was no office only. During the 1.5 months he had been away, that company had gone bankrupt, had shut down, and they had sold the premises to someone else. He had no idea what happened. It's one thing to lose your job, it's another thing to lose the office itself. There's nothing left. So, when things go wrong, we can't just wish away that wrong by thinking, oh, okay, there's so many things right in my life. What about the specific thing that is wrong? So that brings us to the second part of the acronym. What was the acronym? ACE. Yeah, thank you. So A was around. Look for the good around the bad. Now C is look for the good to counter the bad. There are many bad things, there are many good things, but are there among those good things, are there some things which can help me to deal with this specific thing? This has happened, I wish it would never have happened, but now it has happened. What is it that I can do with which I can combat, I can counter that bad thing? Now, this is what shifts our vision from what we don't have to what we have. That's the whole principle we are talking about. But specifically, in what we have, what can I use? The mind is very tricky. The mind makes us feel powerless and then makes us powerless. This is such a terrible thing. I can't do anything about it. Okay, can't do anything about it. I'm ruined now. And we start feeling like that. That feeling itself is a trick. Which means actually I'm completely hemmed in. There's nothing I can do. Has any of you ever felt like that? That you're in a situation where you're completely helpless?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we just, God, I can't do this, I can't do this. Every aspect of my life seems to be is falling apart. So when we feel that there is nothing I can do, nothing I can do to nothing I can do to make things better, then we can ask ourselves a counterintuitive question. Can I make things worse? What? No, already things are terrible. Who wants to make them worse? No, nobody wants to make them worse. But can we make them worse? No matter how bad the situation may be, it never takes away our power to make it worse. We have been in a very bad relationship and everything seems to be crumbling. We may say, whatever I speak, the other person is just not understanding. I can't do anything to improve the relationship. But can we make the relationship worse? Just for 10 minutes, speak whatever is in your mind. If we speak whatever is in our mind for 10 minutes, even the best relationship can get ruined. Isn't it? So, whatever the situation we are in, we always have the power to make it worse. Somebody might be fractured, might got a fracture. The doctor says 6 weeks you have to be on bed now. 6 weeks, yes, I can't do that. Then I feel miserable. I can't do anything. I'm just on this bed for 6 weeks. Well, you can take a hammer and crack your other knee. Now, obviously, we shouldn't do that, and we won't do that physically, but we often do that mentally. We often, our very thoughts make things worse. It's like hurting ourselves. So the point is that if we feel I'm powerless, I just can't do anything, then can I make things worse? Yes, I can. Then, if I just stop doing the things that makes the situation worse, that much is in my control, isn't it? So I can at least not make things worse. That is in my control. And if I can make things worse, then I'm not as controlled in the situation as I think. I can even make them better. So we might be in a very frustrated situation. I was in London, so there's one devotee who had prolonged sickness. Generally, when we are sick, it's annoying. But when there's a sickness, it just goes on and on. Then it's very frustrating. The world now, there's the coronavirus, which is almost terrifying the whole world. It's almost 50 million people are shut in their houses. 50 million is more than the population of New York, LA, San Francisco, and Chicago all combined together. That many people are just locked in their houses. This level of shutdown is unprecedented in the history of the world. So now, when we will be able to find a vaccine for it and when we will be able to cure it, it's all uncertain at this stage. And of course, precautions are being taken. But at the same time, now when there is a sickness and when there is a cure for it visible, okay, I take this treatment, I'll get cured. Then it's relatively easy to manage. But if it's uncertain, the worst problem is suppose you go to a doctor and the doctor says, I've never seen symptoms like this. Now our ego might feel titillated, I'm special. But that's a very disturbing thing to hear. I said, that means you can't be treated also. What do you do? About 2003, 2004, I had been sick continuously for almost 1.5 years. Every evening, I would get a high temperature. And we went to different doctors, they tried different diagnoses. And nothing seemed to be, they couldn't diagnose, they couldn't cure. So then finally, I did some tests and then they found that it was, I did a chest x-ray and the doctor called me and he looked very grave. And he said, you have got TB. My first reaction was, thank God! Now, I was not thanking God that I got TB, but I at least found out what it was. Then something can be done to treat it. So the point is, so I was in London and there was this devotee. He had been sick for a long time. And he was so miserable. So I spent some time talk with him. And then he was broken emotionally. And what happens is, sometimes some people, they fall sick and then they become so irritable. They snap and complain about it with everyone. So they fall sick and they make their caregivers sick of them. Now when that happens, it's extremely miserable. So then I talked with him for some time. Then I suggested these same 3 points to him. I told him this point and told him that just make a resolution that every day for 1 hour you will not snap at anyone. If it's possible, he said, others I told him, you are just making life miserable for everyone and you're snapping. He said, you don't understand how much misery I am in. I said, yeah, I understand. I'm not telling you to stop snapping, just for 1 hour every day. Don't snap at someone. Can you do that? He said, yeah, I think 1 hour is possible. And then what would happen is, his caregivers, whenever they would come, they would like come on tiptoe. It's sometimes people were very irritable. We don't know what will cause them to explode. So, and naturally, when we see people are tense around us, that also makes us tense. So he said just 1 hour, he tried to be courteous, polite, as much as he could. And a surprise for others, and he could see others, they also relaxed a little bit. And he felt good, and he said, hey, that was not that difficult. And then he said, okay, I did it for 1 hour. And he said, okay. He said, at least what happened by that? While he was in bed, he had something to do. Okay, for the next 1 hour, I'm not going to snap at anyone. And then he did it for 1 more hour. And slowly, he felt that it just created such a change. And then what happens for us? If our mind is filled with negativity, that checks the body's innate healing power also. So I can't say that just this exercise contributed, but after he stopped snapping, not only did his emotional health become better, but within a few weeks, he actually recovered much better. Now he's healthy and functioning normally. But there was just one small thing. For 1 hour, I will not snap at anyone. So look, now in this case, what was the good to counter the bad? The bad is the sickness. The good is, see, our consciousness and the frame of mind that we bring into that situation. That is a resource that is never taken away from us. Now we can't completely control it, but it's not completely out of our control. So look for the good that can help us to counter the bad. Suppose somebody loses a job. So this friend told me that when he lost his job, he was so disturbed. But then he talked about his plight to his friends and he realized that he was a part of a spiritual community. So there were so many people who had so many different contacts and they offered this suggestion, that suggestion. And he felt he had actually just been introduced to Bhakti a short while ago. And earlier it says if somebody is from a different country and same different country, there's often a little bit of loneliness. Because you are all alone in a different culture, different country. So because he was with the devotee community, and then he got so much support, he could try this contact. He just felt that community support was such a big thing. It helped him to wade over it. Emotionally, it helped him feel supported. And practically also, within 3-4 weeks, he got a new job. So look for the good to counter the bad. So if suppose somebody loses a job, then okay, maybe I have qualifications, I have experience, I have some contacts, I have some skills by which I can work. So look for the good around them. Look for the good to counter the bad. And when we find this good, then what happens is it helps us feel somewhat equipped. Otherwise, it's like we are fighting unarmed against a heavily armed enemy. What do? You just feel we are inside, we're just being beaten up. So life is so terrible, you are so terrible, people are so terrible. Just we feel beaten up. And if somebody is beating us physically, we can at least try to shield ourselves. But if we are being beaten up mentally, how do we shield ourselves? So if we have look for the good that helps us to counter the bad, we look for that will become like an inner shield for us. And with that we can leverage whatever resources we have. And that way, when actually this is a big subject, but I'll just mention it briefly, that the Bhagavad Gita explains reality is three levels. There's the body, there's the mind, and there's the soul. So our consciousness comes from the soul through the mind to the body. And normally, when we feel mentally agitated, what happens is our consciousness gets caught in the mind and doesn't even come to the body. See, the greater the misalignment between the mind and the body. Say, now, if you are attentive, you as a soul are inside your body. The mind is like a window, and then the consciousness is coming out, and you are perceiving. The greater the misalignment, the more inattentive you become, the more absent-minded you become. Insanity at one level is a complete misalignment with the body and between the physical and the mental worlds, where a person is completely caught in the head, in the mind, in their thoughts, and they can disconnect with physical reality. Now this can also be, the word mania. So many words which earlier had serious clinical clinical sense have now acquired a general sense. So mania refer to madness. But nowadays they say the cricket World Cup comes up, we say cricket mania. Or sport, or football mania, or soccer mania, whatever it is. So when you talk about mania like that, what does it mean? Sometimes you might see, at least in India, I see on the streets if the cricket World Cup is going on, some young people, they're walking on the streets and they're swinging their hands. They're raising up their hands. What are they doing? In their mind, they're playing a cricket match. And they're stars in the cricket match. Now there is no pitch, there is no ball, there are no players. But what has happened is they're caught in the mental reality, at the level of the mind. Now I'm using the word reality because it is from our perspective of experiencing it, we experience it as real. So when we are caught in the mental reality, resentment, there is a problem at the physical level, but resentment catches us at the mental level. So one way to get out of the mind is to get down to the body. Start doing something. If we are doing nothing, then our consciousness stays caught in the mind. But we can get out of the mind, down to the level of the body, and start doing something. Then the grip of the mind on our consciousness decreases. So when we find something good with which to counter the bad, then what happens? We start doing that, and then the mind's grip decreases. So we will find that just by small steps, even if they don't make any significant difference in our situation immediately, they will make a significant difference in our disposition internally. Just start doing small things. The mind's grip will decrease. So this was, what was the acronym once again?
Around.
So A was around, C was counter, and E is emerge. Look for the good that may emerge from the bad. Again, this means if this is best done if we have a spiritual worldview. So within a materialistic worldview, the idea is that either things are in our control or things are out of control. But in a spiritual worldview, we understand that there is some higher plan, there is some higher organizing principle, there is a divine intelligence. And by that divine intelligence, even if things are going wrong right now, good can come out of the bad. Not only can good come out of the bad, but sometimes the bad is the way to the good. The two are different things. Something bad has happened and something good can come out of it. The other is, the bad is a necessary thing we need to go through for some good to come. So we need that perspective of emerge. So in a sense, this acronym is also about the past, present and future. Look for the good around the bad is all the good things that have happened in your life. Look for the good. Counter means in the present, what do I do with it? Look for the good that helps you to counter the bad. And with respect to the future, look for the good that may emerge from the bad. And this brings us, if we have an understanding that there is a divine being. All this sounds fine. I can look for all the good around the bad, but the bad is still there. What do I do about well, that was the good around the bad. If any of you are sleeping, would have probably woken you up. So now emerge. Emerge means, as again, if we have the understanding that there is a divine being, and then that divine being orchestrates life ultimately for everyone's good. The idea of gratitude is something which is universally recognized as valuable. And many people talk about gratitude, how we should be grateful. But in today's world, God and religion have become unpopular words. So many people try to take values away from any spiritual or religious context and they make the values secular. For example, I'm grateful. Well, if you're grateful, to whom are you grateful? No, I'm just grateful. Yeah, it's good to be grateful, but gratitude requires an object. It's like if you ask somebody, somebody says, I'm married. Okay, to whom are you married? No, I'm married in general. No, marriage is not in general. Marriage is in particular, isn't it? So I'm grateful in general. Well, it's good to be grateful in general. But gratitude is connected with some specific being. That, okay, what? I'm grateful to my family, I'm grateful to my friends, I'm grateful to my country. Ultimately, I'm grateful to God. So we can apply gratitude as a despiritualized value and look for the good around the bad, look for the good to counter the bad. But if you want to have the good that may emerge from the bad, we have to root gratitude in its spiritual context. And ultimately, there is an organizing principle, there is a plan in the world. And many of the things that go wrong in our life, they can bring about good. But we look at the present and plan the future. The divine looks at the future and plans the present. We look at the present and plan the future. We feel, I have this problem, and why is this one more problem coming over here? But so from the present's perspective, it just increase problems. But from the perspective of the future, maybe this problem is what is going to save me from a bigger problem. I was in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and I was giving a similar talk. So after that, one Ukrainian girl, she came and talked with me. She shared one of her experiences. She had gone to a retreat center in West Virginia, and it's a remote place. She works on a cruise ship, and she had a break, so she had gone to that center. And while she was there, relaxing, suddenly she got a call from her boss saying that the cruise is going for we are going on a cruise, you have to come immediately, you have to report immediately. Now that retreat is on top of a mountain and there's not easy communication available. So she asked around in the community, is anybody driving? Is anybody leaving? So there's one young man, he said that tomorrow I'm leaving around 10:30. He says fine. Then she booked a flight accordingly around 2:33 from the nearby airport. And then she came there and she waited at 10:15, 10:30, and that boy didn't turn up. Became 10:45, became 11. And she was calling him. It is a little remote place, so network was also not coming. Became 11:15, 11:30, 11:45, and finally the network went through. He called, "Where are you?" She almost screamed at him. He said, "Oh." He said, "I completely forgot that I was supposed to pick you up." He says, "What? How could you forget?" She was just mad with anger. He says, "Come back and pick me. I have to take a flight." He says, "No, no, no. I also have to catch my flight. I have to go urgently. I can't come back." And then and again the network just went off. She was just furious. And then she just went to her room and tried to calm herself down. Then that evening she came for the evening kirtan to the temple. And then another lady there, she said, "Do you know about that boy?" "Yeah." He's still angry with him. He was in a terrible car crash. He was hit by a drunk driver. And then she showed the pictures. Fortunately, this boy was uninjured, but the drunk driver had hit on the other side. The side where she would have been sitting, that completely destroyed. So she realized that maybe there's this, it was not just his forgetfulness, but there are things which sometimes for her, she realized that how that something bad that happened, that he forgot about her and she lost her flight money or whatever. That how it was for the good, she realized after 6 hours. Some of us, we may realize after 6 months. Some of us, we may realize after 6 years. Why something happens at a particular time, if we just get obsessed with that thing itself, then we fragment our reality from the past and the future. So sometimes good emerges from the bad. And if we consider, going back to the other examples, I'll conclude with a couple of examples. I talked about King Parikshit. So when he decided, he came to know that I was going to die in 7 days. So then he decided to renounce the world and just cultivate spirituality for the last 7 days. And he wanted to know, how do I cultivate spirituality? So at that time, many great sages came to him because he was a great person and he was also wanting to be spiritual at the end of his life. And then when these sages come, he doesn't ask any of them, "No, I'm a good person. Why did this happen to me?" He's rather than being resentful, he's grateful. He said, "When I was a king, I would hardly ever have the time or the facility to associate with even one saintly person like you for any significant amount of time. But now, so many of you are here and are ready to be here with me for my final journey. I'm so grateful to all of you. So look for the good to counter the bad. And then look for the good that may emerge from the bad." So in those 7 days, he completely spiritualized his consciousness. The Srimad Bhagavatam is in fact a book that is spoken just to help him remember to raise his consciousness to spiritual level. And as consciousness rose higher and higher to the spiritual level, eventually death came upon him. But his consciousness no longer caught in the body. His consciousness had risen to the spiritual level. And then death was just an event happening to his physical shell. It's like if we are in a car crash, it's dangerous. But if we had left the car and then the car has a crash, still it's devastating because the car is destroyed. But he already departed. So that impetus to spiritualize his consciousness came in a urgent sense because of that particular situation where he was cursed. So the good that emerged from the bad was that he completely attained elevation and liberation. We consider Srila Prabhupada also in his song. He first said, "I'm grateful I have this opportunity to serve." So looking at the bigger picture of his life, this opportunity I was looking for, finally I got it. Then look for the good to counter the bad. So when Prabhupada in his song, he when he comes to the Western world, he feels that people here are so non-spiritual. How can they even understand the spiritual message? So then he falls back on the resource that he has. That resource is the same Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam says that if we just keep hearing spiritual sound vibration regularly, our consciousness will get elevated. Bhagavater katha se tab avatar dhir haya shune jati kane bar bar. So Bhagavater katha, this message of the Bhagavatam, it is non-different from the divine. It is a manifestation of the divine. And if you just keep hearing it regularly, purification will happen now. Dhira. And that is what Srila Prabhupada did. He came to the Western world. He just spoke with people. He heard them to understand the situation, empathized with them, and then he spoke a spiritual message. When somebody was there with him, he spoke all day to people who came to meet him. And practically all night, he was speaking to the people who didn't come to meet him by writing books, speaking to the dictaphone for hours and hours into the night. And he was absorbed. Even then, when people met him, at that time, he was alone. He had no noteworthy success in his life till then. But people who met him, they found he was so cheerful. So his cheerfulness was, although he had a big mission and he had no success, but his focus was on the Bhagavatam. He was absorbed in doing, in the blessings that he had, with which he was countering the situation. And then eventually, what was the good that emerged? In the last 10 years of his life, it was sensational. He wrote 70 books. He traveled around the world 14 times. He inspired millions of people across the world. He built 108 temples. And what he achieved in the last 10 years was made all the more glorious because of all the difficulty he had gone through before that. So the good that emerged from all that was stunning, unprecedented. So for all of us, life puts us in difficulties. But if we just persevere with a positive attitude, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajitam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. He says, if we just maintain a devotional disposition, so now this means affection, a devotional, a positive disposition, that is essentially grateful disposition. If you are resentful, then it won't work. It says, if you maintain a grateful disposition, then I will give you wisdom from within. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. I will give you the wisdom from within by which you can evolve through every situation. Yena mamupayanti te. You can go through that situation and grow through that situation, coming closer to higher wisdom, higher realization. So we can evolve. So if we just maintain this positive disposition, looking for the good around the bad, looking for the good to counter the bad, and waiting for the good that may emerge from the bad, then not only will good things happen to us, but we will also be able to make the best out of whatever bad things are happening. And we will be able to find a way ahead. So that is how each of us, we can respond resourcefully rather than resentfully when adversity come in our life. I'll summarize. I spoke today on this topic of responding to adversities resourcefully, not resentfully. I started in 1835 in the Bhagavad Gita, how the negative emotions that come because of life's stresses, daydreaming or fearfulness or moroseness or resentfulness or intoxication, delusion, all those are understandable, but when you hold on to them, that is misdirected determination in the mode of ignorance, that's self-destructive thinking. And how do we counter it? We can't stop thinking of anything, but we can start thinking of something else. Krishna says, cultivate cheerfulness as an austerity of the mind. And now how do we do this austerity? Talk about cheerfulness comes when we see what is right in our life. That's why cultivating gratitude. And for cultivating gratitude, discuss the acronym. What was it?
Yes.
A was
Around.
Look for the good around the bad. So our mind gets fixated on the bad thing that has happened. We need to get out of that fixation. And one way to do it is to regularly count our blessings. Maybe every day if we pray or we do anything, any regular activity that we do on a daily basis, just before that, we can read the good things that are there. Like write them down sometime and then read them regularly. That'll create a positive frame of mind. And then our mind is a creature of habit. If we regularly look at the good things in our life, then during the course of our daily life also when things happen, when something good happens, we will appreciate that. When we count our blessings regularly, then we will be able to make our blessings count during emergencies, during adversities. And those thoughts will come and they will stay. Otherwise, the negativity will consume and will not be able to really focus on the good things also in our life. So I talked about the example of Srila Prabhupada. He had nothing. His body had broken down. He had no facility. But he was looking for the good. That is, I have the opportunity. So in general, if you consider 3 phases of time, look for the good around the bad means look in the past for all the good things that have happened now. Then what about the specific problem that we are still facing? Look for the good to counter the bad. So our mind makes us feel powerless and then makes us powerless. So when we feel powerless, we can think, can I make things worse? We always can. And then we can at least stop doing the things that make things worse. We are in a sense making things better. And I talked about that devotee, just 1 hour stop snapping at others. And when we see that, okay, I can do this for 1 hour and I can make a difference, we feel inspired to do more. So start whatever we can do, whatever is in our control, look for the good around the bad and build on that. So our consciousness is always with us. We can try to make it cheerful. And beyond that, we can look at what resources we have. And if we look for them, we will find that we have resources. Otherwise, without looking for the good to counter the bad, we feel as if we are fighting unarmed against a heavily armed enemy. Our mind is tormenting us and we have no shield internally. And then ease emerge from that. So we can cultivate the first two even in a non-spiritual context. But gratitude is actually grounded in spiritual reality. It's gratitude not a general virtue, I just feel grateful. It's grateful for someone, grateful to someone. That's toward the divine. And so we look at the present and plan the future. The divine looks at the future and plans the present. So I talked about the girl who the boy forgot to pick her up, but then she was saved of a car crash. So in our lives also, when something bad are happening, the good can emerge from that bad. And so we need to look at the future also with positivity rather than negativity. And if we in this way cultivate gratitude, then that devotional disposition will help make us more receptive to inner guidance. And inner guidance from the divine will also help us to choose wisely and make the best of whatever situation we are going through. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for coming once again to Sydney, Prabhu. Looking forward to all your lectures. Prabhu, I'm just thinking that for someone who's actually going through a crisis or who's really depressed or has something challenging and going through. Now, if I go and explain, the ACE acronym and follow it, it might be difficult for that person to, just follow that. That person may say, oh, easier said than done, So I'm just trying to think, how can we actually practically help the individual? Could be anyone, could be myself as well. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that maybe that person needs a support from someone to guide that individual through this process and help them take the baby steps and go through. So I'm just trying to get your little more inputs on the thoughts on that.
If somebody is actually going through adversity, then is just telling them this kind of framework or is enough. They may actually need someone's help to help them go through that adversity. Yes, life is too complex to ever be dealt with by any formula. So now this is a tool. It is a tool primarily to combat the negativity in terms of resentment. But that doesn't substitute the need for human contact. We are all social beings and we need each other. And this tool, cannot use it to replace authentic spiritual connection with the divine also. But this is a tool by which we can access those things. That means that even in our own lives or anyone's life, we might feel I'm isolated and nobody cares for me and I'm going to do all this alone. Yes, we all at one level are existentially alone. We're born into the world alone and we leave from the world alone. Now, having said that, we don't have to necessarily take the whole life journey alone. What happens for us in our relationships also, we expect some things from some people. Say we expect support from someone, we expect guidance from someone, and sometimes we just don't get it. And it is that what crushes us. However, we could say the universe ultimately is reciprocal. If we give love, if we give kindness, if we offer service, we will get it back. But it may not be by the channels that we expect. Sometimes we get too fixated on getting support from some person. Right? We sometimes want a compliment from some person. And we so much just want one word. But for some people, gifts is like fall in the Sahara Desert. We do that. So what happens is we need to stop overvaluing those who devalue us. And we need to start valuing those. There are some people, intentionally or unintentionally, they just devalue us. No matter what we do, it's not enough. Of course, we always can improve and we can do more. But at present, we are who we are. So there will be some people in our lives who value us as we are. But sometimes we just take them for granted. Oh, this person always there. So it's like say, if we have come to a particular get together or event and we are looking to meet someone. And then there might be someone who just eagerly waiting to talk with us. And they are eager, but this person whose eye want to catch, that person doesn't even look at us. So what happens? We get so caught with that person that we miss somebody else. So in our lives, we may not get emotional support from the particular channel that we expected. So we don't have to make ourselves emotionally dependent on anyone. We need emotional reciprocation. But if you understand that, even if we say that somebody in a close relationship, I expect this much from this much. I'm expecting a small thing from that other person. No, people are different. Different relationship, each person's nature is different, and different relationships work at best at different distances. So we have to find within the boundaries of dharma, with the proper morality, and how do we get from where can we find somebody who values us? So then we won't feel that lonely. So yes, if it is possible for us, if somebody is going through difficulties, then if we can be of assistance to them, this kind of philosophical or analytical understanding, we can see this as one tool to help us, to help them. It is not just it is not a one size fit all formula that can solve. It's not a panacea. It is just one tool. And if we offer ourselves, we offer our help, support, our kindness, our assistance, whatever we can, and then along with that, we offer something like this, they will be more receptive to use it also. Okay. Any other questions?
With the optimism or thinking about the good, are we sometimes, even though it is not negative, we are sometimes perceived as not being real? because there's so much happening around. And I'm not saying living in a dream world and uh, taking a blind eye towards reality, but being optimistic, looking for a brighter future, or thinking about that in a spiritual way. Sometimes we are perceived as not being real. So, is there not worry about the perceptions and then worry about how the situation is, or should we be realistic?
So if we are optimistic, then often we are perceived as not realistic. So, and especially if we are spiritual, then people feel that we are disconnected from reality. Hope springs eternal in the human heart. And the day hope dies, people die. People die emotionally. We need hope in our life. I'm not saying hope in a childish or a naive sense, but we human beings are driven by the longing to be a part of a better future. So that is, we could say, almost a human need at a psychological level. And without that, we just can't function. So so being hopeful or being positive, is it being unrealistic? No, I would say it's being realistic about acknowledging our own needs. That we all need some level of optimism in our lives. Now, having said that, there are some people who are disposed. See, just like in any enterprise, there are some people who are risk takers. So and there are others who are more conservative. They fix things. So I was in Silicon Valley. I think I invited to speak at Google. So there was this question came up at that time. We're talking about psychology. That it's that how different people have different frames of mind. So in general, the people who do big startups, they are not good maintainers. Because generally if you have to start something, you have to be innovative. Innovative means in general break the rules. You break the rules till you find something new that works. But once you find something new that works, you don't want to break that. You want to stick with it. But what happens, those who are innovators, they just can't stick with something. So they want to go do something new. Okay. We do one startup, start something new. So the point I'm making is everybody has a particular kind of mind. So those who are maintainers, they are more cautious. They look at generally in any situation what is the right and what is the wrong. Both are there. So looking at the right creates excitement, adventure, dreams. Looking at what is wrong or what can go wrong, that brings caution, that brings preparation. And we need both kinds of people. In some phases, we might need one more than the other. Something is just to be created, we have to take some risks. But something is already set up, then do we really need to take the risks? We have to see what. So basically, at different phases in our lives, the percentage of how much to be optimistic or how much to be pessimistic, or rather how much to focus on the opportunities and how much to focus on the risks, that can vary. So sometimes it might be that we might be at a different place and they might be at a different place. So we are looking more for the opportunity, they are looking more at the risks. Or we might be and they might just be of a different frame of mind. So that's okay. The problem is when if we focus on either, if we focus on the threats, if we focus on the dangers, focus on the risk, that's also fine. Because that can make us cautious. Focus is not a problem, obsession or fixation is the problem. So if we are so looking at only the positive that we don't even see the negative, that's not just optimistic, that's the English word for this Pollyannish. It's unrealistically optimistic. We don't see any problems at all. That's not going to work. We'll be brought crashing down. So habitually, what do we look at? We need to be cheerful. So now when we say people who always look at what may go wrong, then are they pessimistic? Then what is the hope for them? Actually, those people get joy in the threats, in the dangers that they manage to avoid. You get that? Some people get joy in all the risks that we took and we succeeded. Some people get the sense of, oh, this problem we avoided it. So that's everybody gets the sense of hope and energy from something. So we have to find out where we get that. And if our attitude, whatever it's optimistic or pessimistic, whichever, it's neither negative thinking is not bad. Or rather, or let me put it this way, that negative thoughts are not bad, negative thinking is bad. We have sometimes situations where there will be some negative thoughts, but if you keep having those thoughts, that's bad. So positive thoughts are not bad, but just constant positive thinking without considering the negativity, that can be problematic. So we can look at our mode of thinking, and apart from people saying this, are we getting into trouble because of that? If we are not getting into trouble, if we have moved forward in our life journey reasonably well, then you can say this is what works for me. Some other approach might work for some other people. With respect to psychology, things are significantly subjective. And we need to give room for other people to function in the way that works best for them. But we need to carve out the room by which we can also function. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for the class. It feels like that this is a framework that we can use to understand that we are not the mind when our mind is giving us trouble. Many times I've come across situations where it's not very clear. You feel like you are the cause of the emotions you are experiencing. You are the emotions almost. Like for example, if you're going through the day and you're feeling really morose, you start to ask questions like, why am I like this? Or if I even remember once that I was going through a situation where I was really quite disturbed, and I went to Abhishek and I said, why is it that the classes that used to make me feel really uplifted now, even though I keep listening to them, they don't make me feel upliftment. And he said it's just the mind. It's just the mind, and you don't have to identify it. So how do we understand what is the mind and what is not?
Okay. So how do we understand what is the mind and what is not the mind? It's the same things which used to nourish us earlier. We like to hear classes, but then they stop nourishing us. Then what do we do? Firstly, when we say it's just the mind, that is not to dismiss the mind. Mental reality is also a reality. And if we try to dismiss it entirely, it doesn't work. It is what is the problem is not that my mind is feeling like that. If we reduce our reality to the mental reality, that is the problem. Say for example, some different people have different bodily responses to temperature change. When the temperature drops, some people start shivering. Others not affected by it. When somebody says, I am feeling cold, don't feel cold. What do you mean don't feel cold? I'm feeling cold. Isn't it? Now, if somebody says, I'm feeling cold, so I just go away from there. No, that may not be necessary. Maybe you can put on a warm, put on a shawl or something like that. It's important to stay here. So just as the physical reality is real, similarly mental reality is real. So that means that if we are feeling discouraged, if we are feeling lonely, if we are feeling helpless, if we are feeling whatever we are feeling, we can't just wish away those feelings. So if we see 5:20 in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Na praharishet priyam prapya no brijet prapya cha priyam sthirabuddhir asammudho brahmavid brahmani stitaha." This says, don't be dejected when bad things happen. Don't be elated when good things happen. So he's not saying that don't even think of things are good or bad. God things will happen, good things will happen sometimes, bad things will happen. You perceive them as good or bad. But don't be swept away by those emotions. So one is getting swept, one extreme is getting swept away by the emotions, and the other extreme is sweeping all the emotions under the carpet. That also will not work. You need to acknowledge the emotions. Yes, I'm feeling like this. So we acknowledge the emotions, and then we move forward and see what we can do purposefully. So it's just the mind. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that the feeling is to be denied, but it is just that I don't have to let that feeling become my whole reality. Then what can I do in that situation? If that feeling has come because of some deficiency that we have, maybe we made a mess of things, then we feel, oh, I'm like this, I always keep holding things. Then we need to know that actually, at one level, it takes courage to accept our weaknesses. If somebody says, you did like this, often we tend to deny it, I didn't do it. It takes courage to accept our weaknesses. And it takes more courage to accept ourselves with our weaknesses. To accept ourselves with our weaknesses. This is what I am. Not that I am justifying my weaknesses, not that I want to perpetuate my weaknesses, but it requires courage to accept that. So we need to also be kind to ourselves. Okay, this is the situation I am in. I'm working to improve it. Sometimes it may take time to improve. So don't be, just because we are feeling in a particular way, that doesn't make us a bad person. The mind is like that, we accept it. Okay, I sometimes, when somebody speaks, some people, some of us are more sensitive than others. And somebody neglects us, somebody says one hurtful word, also it hurts us. And then somebody else says, don't be so sensitive. Well, I am sensitive. I will try to overcome the sensitivity, or I'll try to become a little more emotionally rugged. But this is how I am right now. So we have to accept ourselves with our weaknesses and then move forward. So then within that situation, if we find that something which was nourishing us doesn't nourish us, then with respect to the mind, we need always a multi-pronged approach. One approach doesn't work. Just because that worked yesterday for me, it will work today for me also. We go through different phases in our life. And sometimes we may feel, say for example, sometimes we may feel inspired to hear classes around this philosophy. Sometimes we feel, actually, oh, I've heard a lot, now I want to do something. Okay, I want to do some services, I want to go here, do this, do that. So when I start doing something practical, that makes me feel that I'm doing something of value. Some other times you may feel, okay, I just want to withdraw and just hear some music, sing some music, and just lose myself in that. Some other times it might be that I need to talk with someone. So we just talk with someone, unburden ourselves. So we need to have a multi-pronged approach. That it's when just because one thing doesn't work, one thing that was working earlier doesn't work, that doesn't mean there's something inherently wrong with us. It's just the mind is changing, mind is fickle. And sometimes that is the way we grow in multiple areas in our life. So we'll go 3, 4, and sometimes if you find it that way, we can choose that as an impetus for developing in multiple areas. Every day, okay, this particular field, if I know there are 3 things which I like to do, they give me strength also. Then you could decide, I'll focus on one thing for 1 month. And then the next month shift. Next month shift to the second thing. Third month to third thing. And fourth month come back to the first thing. So then we also address the mind's need for variety. So we can't just get carried away with the mind, but at the same time, we can't just neglect the mind. So the mind is like a child. So if a child is crying or whatever, the mother can't just force the child to become silent. But the mother finds out some way or the other to get the child to become calm. Like that, we have to be resourceful. What works? I saw one YouTube video. A baby was crying, and it was crying and crying and crying and crying, and nobody was able to pacify. And the father was there, the grandmother, the grandfather, the baby went to everyone else. And then nobody was able to pacify the child, and they all gave the baby back to the mother. And the mother saw that, the mother started crying. And she started crying loudly. And seeing that, the baby stopped crying. So the mind is like a child. So we have to just see what works. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
There is time. I can see you. Prabhu, the problem sometimes that I have experienced in my own case or with my friends and all is the ACE philosophy. It sounds really practical, but the problem before ACE is acceptance, the A for acceptance, because sometimes we just can't accept what is happening to us to actually move to looking around for around the good, or going to that level is so hard sometimes that in practical way sometimes it can be really hard to actually develop our mindset to apply ACE. What should we do to accept first of all to actually then apply ACE?
Okay. So how can we accept when the resentment is there? Yeah, sometimes it's just that when we realize that all the other options are so miserable, then we choose one option. Like change sometimes doesn't happen unless staying where we are becomes more expensive than going somewhere else. Like we are staying in one house and then we have to shift to some other house. But if we're not leaving and the owner increases the rent, increases the rent, and then eventually I have to shift, I have to spend so much effort, I don't want to do that. But eventually the rent becomes so much, I can't stay here, I'm wasting so much money. So sometimes it's like that where we are, where basically that means where we are or where our thoughts are, that mode of resentment or whatever, it's that unless it becomes so unbearable, what am I doing with this? So where am I going with this? I'm not going anywhere. If we are if we are if we are resenting where we are and we are craving to be somewhere else, then where are we? Actually, we're neither here nor there. Then that makes us completely unproductive. So basically, acceptance is difficult, but the result of not accepting is just continued misery. Let me say accepting may also continue my misery, but by accepting, we can at least come out of the misery. Or we may find out a way to come out of the misery. And also, one thing that may happen is that if we also understand, if we look at our life from a broader perspective, and this is a big subject, the concept of destiny, that sometimes we get, sometimes bad things happen to us and sometimes good things happen to us also. So if you can look at our lives, sometimes whenever we have been successful, we worked hard, but we also got some lucky breaks. And things beyond our control also worked out right. So at that time, if things worked out better than what we deserved, if we are honest, we can admit that there are times when we all have got more things better than what we deserve. Then we understand that I'm going through some phase in destiny when right now it's a negative phase, and that's why I may have to go through this. So that generally negative phase becomes very difficult to accept when we feel, oh, this is how it's going to be. How long is it going to be? So imagine if you you find yourself in a crowded train in a place like Mumbai or somewhere. It's the compartment is for 50 people and there are 300 people in it. And then it's too much. Now, but it's okay, I have to be here for 30 minutes. That's fine. Sometimes you have to be here for 30 hours. Even 30 minutes will become unbearable. So what happens is, if we understand that this is a phase, where I feel I didn't do anything. Generally, resentment comes when we feel that we are unfairly singled out. That if I did something wrong and that's why I got this, then it's difficult, but it's a little easier. But especially when we did something small wrong and something big happened to us, big bad thing happened to us, that's when it becomes difficult to accept. But if at that time we think of other times when we got things better than what we were deserved, then that we say, okay, that is a phase in my life. This is also a phase in my life. So by destiny, sometimes we go through bad phases, but like everything else in the world, even the bad phases are temporary. So if we just be patient, we accept it, then we can move on. So acceptance comes by a philosophical understanding of destiny also. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. So I have written a few books, and we have them here. If any of you would like to have, this is much of what I talked about in the mind. This is in this book called Minded. There are 64 lectures of the Gita. 7 verses talk about the mind.